Well, most security analysts are predicting that if Sweden and or Finland were to join, but let's just look at the case of Finland, that Russia could place tactical nuclear weapons on the Russian-Finnish border. And that's its main threat. Of course, it's been using economic weapons to the best of its ability, but we see the next step of escalation would probably be that, to send a very clear message that Russia, of course, is a nuclear power and that it's not afraid to use it and that nothing is off the table.
So how serious is the threat, and do you think it'll deter Finland?
Well, with Russia, I feel you have to take everything it says and does pretty seriously, but we've seen that Russia has been faltering in the conflict. It hasn't been doing well except in the Donbass region. It's had to retreat in Kyiv and Kharkiv. And so it's not really at its strongest point. But the way Finland sees it is that in terms of dealing with Russia, you can't deal with Russia by appeasing it. In fact, its prime minister had said many times, we tried to appease Russia and nothing has really worked at this point. And so we want to increase our security, and that's only going to happen by joining NATO and by having that guarantee. Now, Finland is already part of NATO's Partnership for Peace, as is Sweden, and so the next steps for Finland, as they see it, is to become an official partner.
Is it any surprise that we're expecting Sweden to make its own announcement on pursuing NATO membership this weekend?
No, not at all. I think that Finland is further along in this. And in fact, if you look at public opinion surveys, 80% of people in Finland now do want to join NATO. Now, in Sweden's case, this was much lower, but it's increasing. You have now 57, 58% of Swedes are in agreement that they should also join NATO. So public opinion has shifted tremendously in this regard because both countries had wanted to just be more neutral. They didn't want to cause any alarm with Russia and to entice the Russians to get more aggressive. But now they're seeing that really there's very little that they can do because the Russians have been incredibly aggressive in spite of the fact that the West has tried many, many times to appease it.
And will both countries be welcomed by NATO, and how long is the process expected to take?
Well, this process could take several months up to a year. Already we're seeing signals that most, if not all, the countries in NATO, with the exception of Hungary, are very welcoming of this. But the process takes a long time simply because they have to agree to what the requirements are and whether or not Finland and Sweden meet these requirements. These legal, military, and political requirements, of course, they do. Then they would have to send an official letter that they intend to join. And then they'd have to ratify it. The NATO countries would have to ratify it. And there could be a lot of discussion here because Hungary could be the spoiler. They could decide that they want something out of this if they are going to agree to ratify these countries to join in, because Hungary is leaning towards Russia in different regards. So this could be several months or it could be up to a year. And I think a lot of that depends on Hungary.
And just finally, Vladimir Putin insists the Russian economy has successfully withstood the blow from Western sanctions. What's your assessment of this?
Well, in some ways, Russia has been able to get away with the fact that every single day, Europe gives Russia $800 million just to pay for different energy products, whether it be gas and oil or whatever. So it hasn't been completely isolated, and that's why it's been able to withstand a lot. But even before these comprehensive sanctions were implemented, Russia's economy wasn't able to grow. It was struggling. And then, of course, with the more recent sanctions, you saw the ruble plummet and then stabilize a little bit. But it's harder for Russian banks to operate, of course, and it's harder for the Russian economy to have any kind of movement, which is going to be incredibly important because they're waging a conflict and one that they're not doing particularly well on. So the game with sanctions is a long one. It takes a very long time for sanctions to really bite, particularly when you're dealing with such a big power that has so much access to different resources that they can sell to the international community, but it is chipping away at Russia's economy.
Natasha Lindstaedt, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.